Hey folks, welcome back to the NoPixAfterDark podcast. I'm so excited for this today's episode. We always have heavy hitters coming in. And I think this episode is going to be very special for people out there who want to know a little bit about if something happens to a loved one. What do you do? What happens? What if they don't have a will? What if we just don't know what to do? So we have the person here that can help us out with that.
Pandora's Box is a mod, vibrant, woman-owned lifestyle boutique located in the historic Federal Hill neighborhood of Baltimore, Maryland. Pandora's Box offers unique selection of the latest trends, jewelry, gifts, home decor, and personal accessories. Their products are high quality, affordably priced, and hand-picked with a sense of humor and authenticity, making them items that everyone can relate to. They are known for sourcing memorable and relevant keepsakes that allow customers to give from their hearts without the stress that comes from doing so. You can count on Pandora's Box to help you select and package the perfect gift. Visit Pandora's Box at 50 East Cross Street, Baltimore, Maryland, 21230. Visit them online at pandorasboxboutique.com. Visit on social media at Shop Pandora's Box Boutique.
NoPixAfterDark is sponsored by Snug Books, an independent bookstore serving Northeast Baltimore and beyond. In addition to featuring new books for all ages, the store also carries cards, stationery, gifts, games, and more. Visit snugbooks.com to shop online, learn more about the store, read our latest newsletter, and find a calendar of events, or come browse the store in person. Snug Books is located at 4717 Harford Road, next to Zeke's Coffee in Hamilton, Laurelville. There is free parking behind the store, and opening hours are Tuesday through Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Welcome to the NoPixAfterDark podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Dante. We have an amazing show for you folks today. I'm so excited to have this person on. You know, we first met at Mako conference, and I was like, I gotta get you on the show because I really want to learn about what you do. And you always say, like, what do people do? What is the register of wills? What do they do? And now we're going to find out a little bit. So today, we have the Honorable Alexis Burrell Rohde. Sorry. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks so much, Aaron. I'm a huge fan of your podcast, and I really appreciate this opportunity to sit down and talk to you today.
And tell people what you do at the Register of Wills at Baltimore County. What do you tell?
So that's kind of a short question with a long answer. So the Register of Wills in Baltimore County and every jurisdiction in the state of Maryland has a Register of Wills, and we perform a couple of functions. One of them is you can store your will for safekeeping in our office, and we can maybe touch on that a little bit as the podcast goes forward. But the bulk of the staff handles administrative probate, which again, lots of jargon, and I'm hoping that we'll have time as we go through the podcast to kind of explain a little bit more about what that does, that means.
I'm very excited. When we met down in Mako, I was like, this is such an important thing. And I'm really glad that we could connect now and do this recording. So let's talk about you. Talk about you. I mean,
okay.
Are you from Baltimore? Or are you from the Maryland area?
So I was born at Johns Hopkins Hospital, so I'm starting from day one. But I was raised in Baltimore County. I went to Loch Raven Senior High School in Baltimore County, and I went away to school. I was at the University of Maryland. I did study abroad and lived a little bit in DC and spent a year in China. But I came back here, raised my family, and I live in Baltimore County now.
Wow. How was the China trip? I mean, was that like just a study abroad, or were you working there?
I was teaching American literature at a university in Beijing.
Wow.
Back in the 90s. So
that's definitely really cool. That's really cool. So like when you are a lawyer, correct?
Correct. I'm a lawyer.
So what did you study for law? Like what was your main area?
So in law school, I didn't really know that I was going to be practicing in estates and trusts. I thought I would do public interest law mainly. But I ended up having my first child in law school, and unfortunately I couldn't afford to live on what they pay public interest lawyers, which is a sad state, but that's the reality. So I went to a big Baltimore law firm called Ober Kaler that's now Baker Donnelson, and I worked in the Estates and Trust Department there for about 10 years. And then I left Ober Kaler and went to the Maryland Office of the Attorney General, where I represented all of the orphans courts and registers of wills across the state as their legal counsel. And I was there for about 5 years. And after I left there, I worked for about a year at Brown Advisory, which is a investment firm in Baltimore, in their Fells Point location. And from there, I spent a little time with the Baltimore City Department of Social Services in their legal department. And then I was appointed by the Orphans Court of Baltimore County to fill the balance of Grace Connolly's term. She was the prior register. She had served for decades in that role, and she retired. So I was appointed, and since last April of 2021, I've been serving as the Register of Wills for Baltimore County.
Now, is that a job where somebody gets elected, or is it appointed? How does that work?
So I am up for election for the next term, and it's a 4-year term. And I know when everyone goes to vote, they have Register of Wills and have no idea what that person actually does. Some states it's not elected, but in Maryland, by our Constitution, it's an elected office. And I am hoping this podcast will help people understand what the Register of Wills does, so when they go in to vote, they know what they're voting for. It's
interesting you say that, because I was looking over my voting papers today, and I was like, Register of Wills. And I was like, how about that? I'm about to have an interview. Yeah. And I was thinking about, wow. So you've been all over the place.
Right. I have had a number of jobs, but I do feel like they've all provided me the training and background to do this job. I feel like I've been training my entire career to be a Register of Wills, which is bizarre, but that's kind of where I sit.
No, that's amazing. I'm glad you really broke it down from everything from Brown Advisory to working for Baltimore City. So you've worked in a lot of different jurisdictions, and you have well-versed in a lot of knowledge of what's going on, what's needed for the area, what's needed, what people need.
Right, and I do feel like working with all the different constituent groups that I've worked with, that I see the issues of estates and trusts and probate from many different angles, from the families that I worked with in Baltimore City Department of Social Services, all the way from the 1%ers that I worked with when I was at Brown Advisory.
So do you think when you got out of college and you went to law school, did you ever think that you would be in this position doing this? Or did you think, when I think of lawyers, I always think of was Matlock a lawyer, I think? Or watching those lawyer shows and they're like, I got you. But you went a different route, a different angle, which is really, really cool and special. And that's exciting to hear.
Yeah, I had no idea that this is where all those roads would lead. Each career, I didn't have a big picture or a big roadmap in my mind. I never aspired to be an elected public official by any stretch. But when I was approached with this opportunity and I knew who else was interested in the position, I felt like I needed to do it because I felt like it was my calling in some way. But I never envisioned being a lawyer. I never grew up thinking I was going to be a lawyer as my career. And it just sort of unfolded in that way.
Great. I love learning about that. So folks, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to learn a little bit more about the Register of Wills. When you got the job and starting from ground zero, what people should know. You talked a lot about states. You talked about a lot of different things that we really want to get into and dissect. So folks, we'll be right back after these messages.
When you give to United Way, your gift could be the first spark of something bigger. It can help someone find, interview for, and get hired for a job, and provide follow-up services for success. It can break down educational barriers and give that extra help to a struggling student with in-school support program.
NoPixAfterDark podcast is fueled by Zeke's Coffee. Have you tried their coffee yet? I'm telling you, there's something different about it. Maybe it's because they roast their beans in a fluid coffee roaster, which provides the most accurate roasting temperatures and made with love. You will just have to check it out for yourself and try their delicious food while you're at it. Open now for curbside service, online ordering, carry out, and they also do wholesale. Visit Zeke's Coffee at 4719 Hartford Road. Open Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Sunday, 8 to 5 p.m. Kitchen closes at 3 p.m. or visit Zeke'sCoffee.com and you too can be fueled by Zeke's.
And folks, we're back with the Honorable Alexis Burrell Rohde. How are you?
Great.
Great. Thank you for coming to the show today. This has been so much education. You're dropping what we call on my show, jewels and gems. So that's a lot of just knowledge, and people want to learn. So, I just had a passing in my family, and I know my dad had a lot of stuff where he put things away. But that's not the case for a lot of people. Some people suddenly pass away, they have no will. Right now, I'm going to admit on tape, I don't even have a will right now. And I'm sure you're going to break it down to the audience out here because, when you're young, you're like, I'm not going to die. Nothing's going to happen to me. I have my name on, my mom has my bank account name and this and that. But I think it's very important that everybody should have a will.
Absolutely. And you're not alone in not having a will. So nationwide, only about 65% of Americans have wills. And that number is about half in the African-American community. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I really wanted to focus on while I was in office was to make sure that the message of the importance of having a will and financial literacy is received in all communities across Baltimore County and the state. So I think in some communities, the message of financial literacy, the importance of having a will is just lost, and people historically haven't taken the time to reach out to the African-American community specifically to explain why it's important to have a will. I mean, a lot of people have the assumption, if I don't have a lot of money, I don't need to have a will. And that's absolutely not true. Everyone should have the ability to have the autonomy to decide who's going to receive their property after they pass away. And it's a question of equity. And it's a question of the best way to pass along intergenerational wealth. Mm-hmm. There is a reason historically why some families and some children are set up better in life than others. And the best way to ensure that your assets pass to the people you want them to so that they can have a better start in life and start building intergenerational wealth is through financial literacy and estate planning. So I've been visiting senior centers, community centers, the AARP meetings, and I've been doing a lot of outreach, and my chief of staff, Josh Greenfeld, has been instrumental in helping me get the message across to try to use this office to really spread the message of the importance of having a will and financial literacy.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's very important. I just remember my parents, especially my dad, was very good about that. He had a will. He broke it down to each person. This is what this is. This is what this is. It was very impressive how we spent with the lawyer. Like, this is what this is. Everything's laid out. And that's very, very important. How do you guys get that wording out? How do you guys get the knowledge out to people like myself, younger adults? How important is there? Like a message? Is there like a social media message? I'm just curious how that works.
So the office does have a social media account, and you can access that. We are on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we're starting to build that presence on social media to get the word out. I also, like I said, do a lot of public speaking at various community groups. And if anyone is interested in having me come to their church group or community association meeting or anything, I'm absolutely willing and would welcome that opportunity to really get the message and kind of demystify what having a will does and what the downfalls of not having a will.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
What is a will? Let's break it down. This layman's term, A, B, C, 3, 1, 2, 3. What is a will, and why should you have a will?
So a will is a legal document that's prepared preferably by an attorney, and we can go into some of the reasons why it's important to have an attorney draft your will as opposed to drafting it yourself or downloading one from the internet. Let's get back to that. So help me remember to get back to that point. But it's a legal document, and in that document, you're able to spell out who you want to serve as a personal representative. And let's also get back to that because I know I'm using some jargon and I really want to explain it, but it's efficient for me to explain what goes in a will in those terms for right now. You appoint your personal representative, you can name a guardian, and you can spell out exactly who you want to receive your assets after you've passed away. You can make provisions for charitable gifts, and ultimately it needs to be signed by the person making the will and 2 witnesses who are over the age of 18 and competent to serve as witnesses. And that's a will. We in my office have worked with wills that were written on the back of Post-it notes or greeting cards. And while that might be a legal document, it's definitely not, or it might be a valid will. It's definitely not best practices.
So what if I come to you and say, I have no money for a lawyer to do this? How does that happen? I mean,
okay.
I have no money. I can't afford a lawyer. Sitting down with a lawyer starts off at $500.
Okay.
I don't have time. I don't have to. Go ahead.
So yeah, that's a great question. And I get that a lot. And so we've put together, again, Josh helped me with this. We put together a list of community attorney referrals and who've disclosed their hourly rate. So you can look on that list, and it's a link through the Baltimore County Register of Wills website. And you can, look at that list, see if there's an attorney that fits your budget. If you are a low income individual, the Maryland Legal Aid has a pro bono estate planning service. So pro bono means free. So if you are income qualified, you would be able to access that program, and they would draft your will and other estate planning documents free of charge. Again, that's income qualified, but that's also a resource for some people. So between the list and also the pro bono program for Maryland Legal Aid, most people should be able to find a way to afford having a will drafted by an attorney.
All right, now you wanted me to go back about the will. You were breaking down some knowledge about the will.
Okay,
Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
So
this is your show.
I mentioned personal representative, and that's the person who you can name in your will. And I wanted to explain what that is. So in Maryland, we say personal representative, but in other states they're called executors. But in Maryland, we call them personal representatives by statute. And it means exactly the same. It's the same role. And what that person does is that's the person who has the legal authority to take assets in a person that are titled in the name of the person who passed away. And so I'm going to explain by an example. So the way people often come to our office is that a family member has passed away and they have, let's say, a checking account that was titled in the decedent, the person who passed away, in the decedent's name, and the bank says you can't transfer this checking account into the name of the children, the beneficiaries, without a letters of administration, and you get a letters of administration from the Register of Wills. So people are like, what the heck is that? Okay, so I'm going to go to the Register of Wills, and they're just going to print out the letters of administration. It's not entirely that simple. So what that means is they come to our office, and the person who wants to be in charge of that job of transferring assets signs some paperwork. And if they qualify, then they're appointed as personal representative, and a personal representative is then issued the letters of administration. And it's a real old-time word that basically means it's a document that shows the personal representative has the legal authority to transfer assets in the estate into the name of the beneficiaries' names. So the personal representative then will be tasked with inventorying all of the decedent's assets, paying bills, paying claims, that sort of thing, and then ultimately distributing those assets to the people named in the will, if there is one, and if there isn't a will, under the Maryland default provisions that are called the Maryland laws of intestacy. So intestacy means if you die without a will. So that whole process is called estate administration, and my office oversees that entire process.
That sounds like a long process.
It can be, but I have to say most people who come into our office are not represented by an attorney, and I have a staff of around 45 people who are geared for customer service, and they walk you through each step to help you fill out the paperwork and meet any filing deadlines. It's, most people who come to the office think they're going to be walking into, I hate to throw the MVA under the bus, but they're going to be walking into the MVA.
I got you.
And there's going to be roadblocks at every step. But most people, when they come into the office, they have the attitude that this is going to be a pain. But 95% of the people who leave the office have been satisfied and have smiles on their faces that this wasn't as hard as they thought.
So can you fill like a will online? Can you do like a will online? Can you do something like, because nobody wants to go in anymore. Everybody wants to do something online. Can that happen? And then do I have to go into your office, do any of the work? Can I just send you everything over line and scan it to you?
I wish that were the case, but unfortunately we are still a paper-focused office. We're the registers of wills. There's 24 in the state of Maryland, and we are working towards having e-filing available to us. But right now it is a paper-focused enterprise. But you can call the office. We will mail you the forms you need to fill out, and someone will walk you through how to complete those forms, and you can mail them in.
So estates. People probably might not know something about estates. Somebody passes away, they automatically go into their finances, and their houses or whatever goes into an estate. How does that work with registered wills? Like, I mean, the estate, say for instance, like you did explain, so say for instance, I didn't know I was a beneficiary for Joe Schmo. And then how does that come about? How does one know about that? How does that work with the estate?
Okay, so the estate administration process was the being appointed as personal representative and then inventorying all the assets that a decedent had in his or her name, paying bills, and then distributing it according to the terms of the will or intestacy. And that whole process is estate administration. So your estate, when you pass away, are all of the assets held in your name when you pass away. So that would become part of your estate.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
You did.
Okay.
You did.
Okay.
You did. So, and then I guess the bigger question would be, I say for instance, hypothetically, I pass away right now.
Okay.
I have nothing. I have all this estate, but no will. Walk me through what would have to happen. Walk us, the audience, through what would happen right now at this point. I pass away. What happens? Like nobody, my mom, my sister, my kids, like what happens at this point?
Okay, so if you pass away and you don't have a will,
I don't have
then
one. Yep.
your assets would be distributed according to Maryland law, these set of default provisions that in legal jargon are called the laws of intestacy. And it's basically the Maryland Code has set up what would happen to your assets if you don't have a will, because we know many Americans die without a will. So there's these default provisions. So under Maryland law, some of your assets would go to your spouse and some of your assets would go to your children. And many people are surprised by that because they assume if I'm married, my wife gets everything. But that's not what happens under the Maryland laws of intestacy. The other thing that we often see is your children get to inherit a portion of all of your assets. So you have a house. They might receive a portion of your house, but they don't have an ability necessarily to buy and sell that property. Or sometimes families are forced to sell their real property in order to distribute it under the laws of intestacy. So that can be extremely disruptive to your family.
No, it sounds like it, because I'm like going over my notes and like that sounds like a lot of conflicts that can happen right away.
It is. And we often have issues in families because, you know, if you have stepchildren.
Right. I was going to ask you that.
Stepchildren don't inherit under, they inherit eventually under the laws of intestacy, but in most circumstances, stepchildren wouldn't inherit. So if you had a blended family and you had stepchildren and biological children who in your mind you treated all as your children, they wouldn't be treated the same when you passed away. The biological children would receive assets, whereas the stepchildren would not.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yes.
That's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of people that get involved with that. And so would it, say for instance, my spouse or my mom or stepkids or whatever it may be, run to you guys first and say, I lay claim to all this. This is, what happens when it comes to that point? I mean, I know you don't, how do you guys make that decision? How do you guys come up, or does it go to law? I mean, I know it goes to go to court, but how do you guys figure out who has access and rights to that?
Right. So that's why my office is involved in the importance of the Register of Wills, is we oversee the entire estate administration process to ensure that the personal representative distributes the decedent's assets how they're supposed to be distributed. So if you don't have a will and you're relying on the laws of intestacy, there's really strict provisions as to who receives what. So my office will ensure that the personal representative gives those assets to who's supposed to have them. So depending on the size of your estate, you might have to make a filing after the estate's been open for 6 months. What's in the estate? And what are the debts of the decedent that need to be paid? What are the expenses of administration and that sort of thing? And then ultimately, that document will show where the assets will be distributed. And if you are interested in an estate, you get a copy of that document. And if you think that the personal representative is not doing what he or she is supposed to be doing under Maryland law or under the terms of a will, you can complain and ensure that it's handled appropriately. So my office provides protection for beneficiaries to make sure that they get what they're entitled to.
That's nice, because we had a situation, now I'll try to reflect everything into personal stories for people, where my uncle passed away. He had no will. So they had to go, so he had no kids. So then what happened was, somehow my mom got involved. There's 2 sisters and 2 brothers. And then his mom, my grandmother, passed away right after that happened too. So it was a lot of moving parts, and he had loans that were out, and it was a lot. And to this day, I don't understand it. But Wells Fargo, I don't even want to give a shout out to them, but they did clear all his debt. They didn't want any money back, and it was very interesting how it got passed on to my mom. Have you guys seen that when people don't have kids, it gets passed to their brothers, their sisters? Have you guys seen that?
Yes, absolutely. And that's, again, the Maryland laws of intestacy will spell out who gets it. So if you pass away and you don't have children, then it would move up to your parents. And then if your parents have passed away, then the assets would go to siblings. So that's how your mom got your uncle's assets. And that's spelled out under the Maryland laws of intestacy. If you had a will, or if your uncle had a will, he could have maybe avoided some of that legal proceeding and just left everything to your mother or a charity or whoever else was entitled to it. And that does touch on one issue, that there's a lot of misconceptions that if you serve as personal representative, you're responsible for paying the decedent's debts, but you're not. So all of the debts of someone who's passed away, provided that someone else didn't guarantee a loan, for example, have to be paid by the estate. And if the estate doesn't have enough assets to pay all of the claims or the debts, then it just is an insolvent estate, but it doesn't pass on to the next generation.
So the person get debt from you. So
correct.
If a person passed away, was in the debt, and then they will take all the money from the estate. And then if they still didn't have money, it wouldn't go to the sibling.
Correct. That's correct.
That's good. That's good.
That's great. Right. And I just want to point out, I'm not providing legal advice. I'm just giving information. But that, I guess there's other, someone guaranteed a loan that might change how how it works. But under normal circumstances, if the loan wasn't guaranteed by someone else who is still living, your debts are paid by your estate. And if there's insufficient funds, then they don't get passed on to family.
What would you, one thing or one or two things you want people to walk away from this interview? Just learning from what we've talked about today. And also to, hey, we want to keep you in office. Let's talk. I mean, that's why we're here.
Okay.
Let's talk. Let's talk about it.
So if when I do speaking, the one thing I want people to know is that it's one main takeaway is to have a will. And if there are financial barriers that you perceive to getting a will or working with an attorney, there are resources. Like I said, Maryland Legal Aid is a great resource. Also, my office has a list of attorneys, and many of them have volunteered to do some of this work with reduced pricing or even pro bono in some circumstances. So everyone should have a will. Everyone should have that autonomy to name who they want to receive their assets. And again, I think it's an entree into greater financial literacy and understanding of the legal system, and that it's not something to be afraid of. Everyone should have access to that message and those resources.
Nice. And then you're up for election.
I am up for election. That's right. So like I said, I was appointed for the first year and a half, and now I'm up for election in November. Early voting starts next Thursday, so everyone should vote. And I am up for election. I'd like to continue the work that I've started. I think I've made some pretty good strides in messaging and inclusivity with the office, but I have a lot more that I want to do, and another 4 years would help me do that.
Well, hey, this is what NoPixAfterDark podcast. We want to get the voices of the unheard, and this is definitely this is the voices of the unheard who do pass away, but you guys are giving people voices and getting those people's options out there. And I really enjoy listening and learning from everything you've just talked about today, because I think it's very valuable that people know about this, and whatever we can do on our end to really highlight it and talk more about it to our public, please let us know. So here's the fun part. Got you off the hot seat now.
Okay.
Got you off the hot seat. All right. Crab cakes or crabs?
Crab cakes. For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I can eat some crabs. I am from Baltimore, but I feel like it's so much effort just to eat.
Okay.
And I really like food. So it's a faster way to get crab into my belly as if it's in a cake.
All right. So I know you're an avid bike rider, so I have to ask the question. When did you start bike riding, and what was your favorite race you've ever done?
Oh my gosh. So I guess I started the first competition that I ever did that involved biking is I did the Iron Girl triathlon in 2008. And my favorite leg of then a triathlon is you swim, bike, and then run. And by far the favorite leg of that for me was the cycling piece of it. And so that's basically when I started. And I have always been a runner, done a bunch of marathons, but that's what I was like, I suck at cycling, but it's so fun. I need to work on this. And that's sort of what got me started. So my favorite race is probably not a race.
Okay.
I really enjoy on a fall morning getting out on some gravel roads and away from cars and riding my gravel bike in the country of either Baltimore County or southern Pennsylvania. That's kind of my favorite jam.
Nice, nice. Do you so chicken wings? We always ask this question. I don't know if you eat meat or not. Do you eat meat?
I eat meat.
Okay, I gotta make sure a lot of people don't. Drums or flats?
Flats for sure.
Okay. Blue cheese.
Who likes drums? I don't know.
I like flats.
Josh, right,
I like flats. I think drums were good when I was younger. Flats are better when you're older, I feel like.
Yeah.
Blue cheese or ranch? Ooh.
Blue cheese probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you a honey Old Bay person? Is that your flavor, or is it like you like regular plain barbecue?
A barbecue. Yeah.
Okay.
Classic. The classic.
Fall or spring?
Fall.
And what is your favorite band you've ever seen live in concert?
Wow. That's a tough one. I saw, okay, so this was kind of silly, but I saw the Violent Femmes at the 930 Club.
Okay.
After they were old and I was old, but it was really fun.
Okay,
It was a super fun time.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Let's plug all the social media handles. Where can people find you? Know them or email whatever we can plug in, because we want to see y'all start TikToking on here. You know?
Yeah.
That's the way that's the way things are. But what's the best way to get a hold of you? Your email?
I'm going to give you my email address and give the listeners my email address. And
you want everybody to email you? You sure about that?
Yes, I'm sure.
All right.
And I also, I do have social media, but I don't know my handles off the top of my head because I need help with this.
It's all good.
But my email address is long, but it's ABURRELLROH as in Harry, D as in David, E as in Edward, at registers, spelled out, .maryland.gov. But the easiest way to get all that information is to just search for the Baltimore County Register of Wills. And when you land on the website, my email, my phone number, the link to the attorney community resource page is there, and a lot of other valuable information appears.
Well, what we'll do for you is after this episode, we'll get the link, all your handles, and put it on the video.
That would be great.
And when I put my social media posts, they'll be in a social media post.
Okay, that would be great.
Makes it much easier. Again, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I've learned a lot. The team has learned a lot, and I know the audience has learned a lot. And thank you so much for and once you get elected, we're gonna bring you back.
That would be great.
Bring you back in here
and this was such an honor and a privilege to be here. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of your podcast. You do really great work, and I really appreciate this opportunity.
I always tell people it's like chatting with old friends. That's all it is. We have a good time, folks. Love, peace. We're out.